Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 10th Annual Pride Business Forum. My name is Adela Horakova, and I have a pleasure to be your host for second time in a row. Last year, I almost forgot to hand out the main award, so let's see what will go wrong this time. The pandemic forced us to go online, as you noticed. We're not, for the first time in 10 years, in Hilton Old Prague Hotel. There are some downsides to that, such as we will not be able to hear your laughs and your reaction from the audience. But there are some upsides. You can, for example, treat this conference as one long coffee break and stay in your pajamas. I am very excited because I'm not here alone. Like last year, I am joined by an experienced TV journalist and a host of the DEVA TV interviews, Emma Smetana. Emma, welcome.
Thank you so much, Adela. I am very much honored to be part of this and welcome everyone. Now, if you wish to join us, please see our conference online at www.pridebusinessforum.com. And in case you know some friends or colleagues who may be interested in joining us as well, please do not hesitate to let them know. They are all, and you are all very, very welcome. We are about to start and we're looking forward to it. Also, if you are on social media, which we suspect most of you are, and wish to mention us, which we would be quite happy about, the hashtag for today is PBF2020. You can like us, you can follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. Now, time has come to reveal what exactly you can expect from today's conference, even though, as you've seen Adela in the last year, for instance, forgetting giving awards to people and stuff like that, maybe you still have vivid memories about what was going on. It will be quite similar today, even though it is in this online format, which allows us to imagine how happy you are, how amused you are. So we will use our imagination. But there are certain factual points, I would say, that we will stick to. First of all, we will hear from distinguished keynote speakers that were interviewed by Adela and also by Jan Zika, our US collaborator. In this TV studio, I will be talking with business leaders in live panel discussions, looking into the last 10 years' progresses and challenges of advancing LGBT equality when it comes to the Czech workplace. Obviously, we will also discuss what lies ahead of us in the future, especially in the near future, in light of the global pandemic and economic crisis.
And we want you to be part of this conference as much as possible. So please do use our interactive channel at Slido. That is www.slido.do. You can enter a hashtag PBF2020. You will have a chance to answer the polls that we will put up during the conference and ask any questions you want, anonymously or not. That is up to you. There's no need to download anything.
Adela, I meant to ask you, were you present at the first Pride Business Forum?
Unfortunately, I was not, as many other companies. Here the beginnings were much more modest than what we're seeing today, because at that time not many companies were aware of the problem that LGBT equality posed today and the opportunities, the solutions offered.
That almost sounds like Ramzan Kadyrov saying that there are no gays in Chechnya, right?
Sounds like it, but you cannot always blame the employers, because studies show us that 51% of people are not out in the Czech workplace. They're hiding who they are. So the employers often do not even know they have LGBT employees. But over the last 10 years, the situation has changed and improved for the better. Not only because of the work of organizations like Pride Business Forum, but because of global trends. We will be discussing these global trends as well as local reality checks in Czech Republic with our keynote speakers throughout the conference.
Now, I heard, Adela, that you interviewed Vladimír Dlouhý, president of the Chamber of Commerce. Knowing his positions on LGBT people when it comes to the possible barriers or difficulties they might encounter at their workplace, how did it go?
Well, I have to say it was one of the more challenging interviews I had to do this year. We're very happy Mr. Dlouhý accepted our invitation. He is a prominent political figure in the Czech Republic. Many of our viewers will know him as the former trade minister, and he's currently serving as the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. He has publicly expressed certain doubts as to LGBT people do really encounter problems at work, and he was slightly skeptical as to the role employers need to play in removing these barriers. We reach out to him because Pride Business Forum is an open-minded platform, and we want to discuss with people who do not yet see the advantages of LGBT equality at workplace. And we're very happy he accepted our invitation. And to be positive, I think we can see this interview as an excellent example of why the work of organizations such as Pride Business Forum and its members is still very much needed, and why we need more and more companies to join.
Let's continue with this open discussion with business leaders from Microsoft, Škoda Auto and Vodafone Czech Republic. Before we start, we would like you to turn to Slido on www.slide.do, #PBF2020, and answer our following question. Does your employer actively work on advancement of LGBT equality at your workplace? A, yes. B, it is part of the diversity and inclusion strategy, but it is not actively pursued. C, no. Or D, I don't know. Thank you for being with us and for being as interactive as possible. Now stay with us, write down your comments, write down your questions.
When we were thinking about who should set the tone of our conference as the first keynote speaker talking about global trends, our choice could not have been easier. Fabrice Oudard is one of the authors of the United Nations Standards for Conduct of Business on LGBT workplace equality. He traveled the world in the last 3 years talking about this important and revolutionary document, and thanks to his work, more than 300 companies sign up for the commitments contained in this document. Fabrice is currently working as a World Programs Managing Director at the organization called Out Leadership. He was talking to our correspondent and a dear friend, Jan Zika, in New York.
Fabrice, welcome to Pride Business Forum, and thank you for making time for it.
Thank you so much for having me. You know, as a European, I'm extremely interested in the development in the region on LGBTI equality, so it's a great honor to be here.
Let me start by saying that 10 years ago, LGBTI issues were not a big topic for companies. And since, a lot has changed, and companies have become intensely interested. So what has changed?
Well, you know, the economic and business case for LGBTI equality has never been as well articulated as today. In fact, you know, one of my colleagues, Professor Lee Badgett at the Williams Institute at UCLA, just published a book called The Business Case for LGBTI Equality, in which she shows the incredible body of evidence that companies benefit from being LGBTI inclusive at the individual level, meaning that the employees are more productive, you have better retention, you can acquire better talent. It also benefits from it at the business level, which is that, you know, LGBTI people bring the diversity of thoughts that are necessary to be a performing company. And then economies that are inclusive of LGBTI people, and particularly cities, are faring better. So in many ways, now the question for companies is not so much, should I be LGBTI inclusive? Should I position myself on this issue? It's really when. Because it is evident that there is a benefit for companies to be LGBTI inclusive.
Is the LGBTI inclusion a global trend?
That it is increasingly the case all over the world. And the reason is that millennials, wherever you go, have an understanding that the most power that they have is as employees, as consumers, and as shareholders. And in fact, sometimes they believe more in the power of the private sector than the democratic process. And so what they do is that they put pressure on the company they work for, the companies they spend money with, the companies they invest in, to be LGBTI inclusive. Because being LGBTI inclusive is very often perceived as the canary in the coal mine. Meaning that if you make efforts on LGBT issues, you probably are also good on gender, you probably are also good on race, and you probably are better on the environment and on labor. And so very often, the public will pay attention to LGBTI issues.
Would you say that it is a necessity, not just a matter of fashion, for the companies to actually embrace LGBTI rights?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you could say the same thing about gender equality or racial equality or the environment or fair labor. I mean, you know, the bar is always a little bit higher for the private sector to align their policies and practice with what we call corporate social responsibility, right? So I think that something that we really have to understand is that it is going to be gradual progress that we are going to achieve, you know. At the beginning, what you want is to protect your employees from harassment in the workplace, to ensure that they can talk openly about who they are. And then, you know, we also want to see greater representation of LGBTI people in management, as an example, or the C-suite. And then something that we discussed earlier is the fact that LGBTI people are not represented on the corporate board, right? And that's something that we want to see change. So in many ways, you know, for companies, there is always the next benchmark to achieve. And the reason is because we start from a very low point in which LGBTI people did not have any opportunity and did not have any dignity in the workplace not such a long time ago.
What major developments do you think that we will see in the very near future?
Well, you know, what we are going to see is that increasingly all over the world, we are going to see a fair representation of LGBTI people in the executive committees of companies. We are going to see openly lesbian women that are CEOs of companies. We are going to see more directors that are LGBTI people. And increasingly, we are going to see trans people being part of the workplace. So the question for companies is, are they on the journey? Because it's not so much a destination. You don't become, you know, LGBT-proof overnight. What you do is that you take steps to ensure that little by little, you get to a place of fairness.
Is there any message that you would have for the participants of Pride Business Forum? That's something that's on your mind perhaps today.
Business, change is not necessary because survival is optional. Meaning that if you don't change, you probably disappear. And I really believe, you know, and I have observed it in countries after countries, that the companies that are making this change when it comes to ensuring that there is representation of women, representation of people of color, representation of LGBTI people, those are the companies that will still be here in 50 years from now. The ones that are reticent, that are dragging their feet, will miss the boat, and they will probably not survive.
Fabrice, thank you very much for coming. This was fascinating.
I have a pleasure now to introduce the second keynote speaker of our conference, one we mentioned already earlier on, Mr. Vladimír Dlouhý. He is a well-known figure in the Czech Republic, being the former trade minister, and he's currently serving as the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. Last year, the Czech ombudswoman, Mrs. Šabatová, ran a large survey, a probe into the life of LGBT people in the Czech Republic, searching for the quality of life and potential problems they encounter. The results were somewhat shocking and disturbing, and that is why she decided to publish a set of recommendations for employers to tackle discrimination of LGBT people in workplace. She sent this set of recommendations to Mr. Dlouhý, asking him to distribute it among the members of the Chamber of Commerce, which is what he did. And at the same time, he chose to publish his own personal opinion in a magazine, Reflex, in June last year, in which he expressed certain skepticism as to whether the problems really existed and the roles employers should play in tackling them. He said he was not sure how to implement these recommendations, and also mentioned that the idea of trainings on workplace harassment seemed funny. So this opinion was actually a starting point of our discussion. We invited Mr. Dlouhý because we like Prague Business Forum to be an open-minded platform where we welcome people with different opinions, and we're very happy that he accepted our invitation. His opinion matters not only because it represents views of a large part of the society, he certainly does not hold these views alone, but also because he is a chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, an organization that brings together over 16,000 corporations in the Czech Republic. And last but not least, the Czech Republic just decided to nominate Mr. Dlouhý for the Secretary General of OECD. If he does end up being elected the Secretary General of OECD, we will see how he will deliver on his promise to modernize OECD while tackling LGBTI problems at workplace. Dobrý den, pane prezidente. Děkuji vám, že jste se na nás udělal čas a chcete se s námi popovídat o situaci LGBT lidí na pracovišti. Moje první otázka směřuje na reakci vaší, kterou uveřejnil časopis Reflex minulý rok 13. června.
Nejdřív ještě, jak říkají matematici před závorkou, řeknu, že jsem v úvodu a potom i dále v tom článku jednoznačně odsoudil osudy významných gayů a lesb. Prý nemám říkat lesbičky, mám říkat lesby, jak je to potom, když se to skloní. Lesb. Dobře, tak významných lezeb, ano, děkuji. Významných lezeb, které prostě nejenom proto, že byla kriminalita trestná, jako to bylo v Británii po druhé světové válce, ale i z důvodu bigotnosti společnosti trpěli způsobem, který je nepřijatelný, a přihlásil jsem se k tomu, že je dobře, že se tato situace měnila a mění. A jenom jsem řekl, že já prostě si nedovedu představit, jakým způsobem mohu nakázat, aby naše členské firmy něco takového dělali. Já jsem je informoval a potom jako Vladimír Dlouhý jsem vyjádřil pochybnosti širšího charakteru v tom článku. Ale neřekl jsem, že když homosexualita není trestná, že je všechno v pořádku. To jsem rozhodně v tom článku neřekl a prosím, každý, kdo chce o tom článku přemýšlet, ať si ho přečte.
A myslíte tedy, že je všechno v pořádku na českém pracovišti, že tam LGBT lidé se nepotkávají s nějakými bariérami?
Ale já jsem především vznesl dotaz, jakým způsobem i ty manažeři to mají zajistit. A tam jsem si dovolil některá úsměvná přirovnání k požárnímu poplachu nebo ke známé scénce ze svěrákových filmů úplatky nebrat, nebo se z toho zblázníte. Já jsem ti chtěl říci, že mi připadá takováto žádost formální, která vyvolá spíš negativní reakci a že si z toho budou lidé dělat spíše legraci. Já si totiž myslím, že to, čeho vy chcete dosáhnout, je věc nějakého celospolečenského uvědomění. Že je to asi určitý i generační vývoj. Já třeba jsem člověk, který se domnívá, že je dobře, že mohou páry se stejnou sexuální orientací uzavřít sňatek. Ale třeba jako Vladimír Dlouhý ve svých 67 letech, a dokonce už i bohužel pár měsíců nad to, mám silné pochybnosti, jestli tyto páry by měly adoptovat děti a vychovávat je. Vím, že spousta lidí, včetně třeba mé současné ženy, na to má jiný názor, ale já mám tento názor a to mě vede k tomu, proč jsem ten článek napsal. Mně připadá v této oblasti, ale v těch oblastech, které jako dneska spousta lidmi jsou vnímány jako příbuzné, třeba hnutí MeToo, nebo teď v současné době Black Lives Matter, že jsou to prostě problémy, které v té společnosti jsou. Nikdo z nás nezná americký středozápad, nebo málo kdo z nás v Evropě zná americký středozápad, aby uměl posoudit, jaké je skutečně rasistický útlak černochů, jestli je nebo není. Ale tato hnutí, podobně jako celá řada hnutí spojená s LGBT, ještě s tím plus na konci, mám pocit, jako kdyby degradovala do nějakého trošku až násilného hnutí, kde lidé ve společnosti často mohou mít pochybnosti. Třeba nemusí být proti, nemusí mít takové ty základní bigotní představy, ale mají vnitřní pochybnosti a jako kdyby byl vytvořen názor, že ve slušné společnosti se tyto pochybnosti nesmí říci.
1/2, 50% LGBT lidí v České republice není out na pracovišti. Takzvaně se skrývá.
Tomu, že není out.
Skrývá svou sexualitu, skrývá to, s kým žije, skrývá to, s kým má děti, vychovává a žije a tak dále. Byl to třeba i můj případ dlouho, takže bavme se konkrétně. Ty důvody, které k tomu vedou...
proti otázku. Je to proto, že ty lidé mají vnitřní mechanismus, nebo že se obávají, že to ovzduší na tom pracovišti je takové, že by jim to snížilo postup, zesměšnilo a tak dále?
To určitě také, to je v tom zahrnuto. Ty důvody jsou různé.
Právě vědět.
Ty důvody jsou různé. To, že se obávají o ohrožení svého kariérního postupu, to je jeden z nich.
To je přesně to, proč já jsem teda tomu dopisu nerozuměl. Vy si myslíte, že by teda managementy měli aktivně, znovu
nikdo
opakuji,
k tomu nenutí, je to
aktivně měli svolat zaměstnance a říct, hele, my jsme tady parta lidí, my tady pracujeme spolu, jestli někdo z vás má jinou orientaci sexuální než v minulosti bývalo zvykem, tak to řekněte a my vás nebudeme diskriminovat. To třeba by se mělo udělat. Já mám pocit, že daleko lepší je, když s těma lidma tady zacházím dobře, když dělám pro ně občas, třeba když po první vlně koronaviru, kde my jsme tady pracovali i po sobotách a nedělích, pak jsme prostě, když udělali nějakou letní party, kde se pilo pivo a hrál se volejbal a tak dále, kde prostě my s těma lidma fungujeme a je mi úplně jedno, jakou ten člověk má sexuální orientaci. Nebo
to je skvělé, že vám je to jedno, teda mimo toho, že se
ale
třeba domníváte, že by neměl adoptovat
dobýváte
děti.
v této situaci zbytečně agresivním způsobem nejenom vy, ale po celém světě do otevřených dveří.
Já znovu opakuju, tady se bavíme o doporučení.
Je tady gejové a lesby, to je jedna věc. A pak já zase jako Vladimír Dlouhý, podobně jako s tím mou výchovou dětí, mám problém potom už s těmi transgendery a dalšími věci. Tam já prostě problém mám. To se na mě nezlobte.
Máte problém s tím, že ti lidé existují? Nebo?
Ne, že existují, ale jako nevím, jestli je to problém stejného charakteru, jako když někdo je lesbička nebo gay. Já, pokud bych se měl stát, víte, že kandiduju na generálního tajemníka OECD, určitě bych věnoval této problematice pozornost, protože to patří mezi standardy práce OECD. Nicméně první, co bych udělal, že bych si nechal předložit jaksi skutečně jaksi podrobně ty data, nejenom kolik kdo odpověděl, ale jak ty data opravdu odpovídají realitě. Já si totiž myslím, že daleko větší problém je to postavení žen v té společnosti. Neuražte se, než postavení těchto skupin, kde je hrozně těžké skutečně. A já nějak jsem tu matematickou statistiku taky vyštudoval, takže, nebo i statistiku obecně, je strašně těžké potom opravdu zjistit ty základní faktory, které stojí za těmi odpověďmi, za těmi čísly. Ale já se to nechci skrývat. Já vám rovnou na kameru rád řeknu, že si myslím, že tento problém je potřeba řešit. Že si jenom myslím, že jsme se teď dostali do situace, kdy jednak přicházejí doporučení, které jaksi té vaší věci nepomohou. A jednak vracím se k tomu, co vy nechcete slyšet, že se chcete bavit jenom o tom dopadu na ten pracovní trh. Ale je to, a to pak ten dopad na ten pracovní trh má, je to celospolečenský problém, že vaše problematika je zarámovaná v daleko širší problematice těch věcí, o kterých jsem se zmínil, kde lidé, především třeba v západní Evropě a v některých dalších zemích, zvláště starší, jako začínají nebezpečně tvořit to, čemu se říká ta silent majority. Že totiž uvnitř té společnosti je jiný názor, než to, co ta společnost vykazuje navenek. A to je hrozně nebezpečné pro každou vyspělou
A vidíte
společnost.
právě proto, že my jsme si přečetli vaší jaksi odmítavou reakci na doporučení paní ombudsmanky, tak jsme vás pozvali, abyste dostal možnost tady s námi o tom hovořit.
Já jsem si rád s váma sednul, dokonce jsem vám řekl předem, že nemám moc rád, když se to dělá online, že mám radši osobní přístup, že bych velmi rád přišel, bohužel to nejde v této covidové době, spíš osobně, a když to budete dělat za rok nebo za 2, tak ať budu tím či oním, tak třeba rád přijdu zase.
Děkujeme.
Welcome back to our live studio. Welcome to the first live panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, please let me welcome Director of Commercial Customers Division and Diversity Champ at Microsoft, Alena Sochorová. Good morning.
Good morning.
HR Director in Vodafone Czech Republic, Karl Clark.
Hi, morning.
Hello. And Head of External Relations of Škoda Auto, Michal Kadera. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, Mrs. Sochorová, could you please explain us the title of your function? What does it exactly imply to be a diversity champ?
Diversity champ is a voluntary, I would say, a voluntary title that I have in Microsoft, and that means that I'm ready to support, and I'm actively promoting the topics of the diversity and inclusion inside Microsoft, the local subsidiary. But also, I'm really ready to be open in the discussions outside and helping actually the society in the Czech Republic to understand what it means, what it is about the topics of diversity and inclusion, what are the ways how to actually improve the life of the minorities at work, and what it is actually the business case that we can bring back to the business if we treat the people the way inclusion and diversity is suggesting.
Well, in that case, let me ask you more specifically, what exactly do you do in your position when it comes to LGBT workplace equality? If you could be as specific as possible when it comes to your daily work.
So for the daily work, I'm asking the questions when I see something that I don't believe is right. I'm helping people to tackle if they see any issue or if they see any challenge they have personally. I'm here for them to help them understand what they could do, how they could move forward, and I'm ready to support. And to be very specific, we every year in Microsoft we always create kind of our agenda for the next fiscal year, the personal agenda, what we will achieve, what we want to do. So a year ago, we do it usually in September. So a year ago, as one of my goals, I decided that for the local team, the leadership team in the Czech Republic of Microsoft, and if I remember my words correctly, I wrote as one of my objectives that I will move the needle in understanding of the inclusion and diversity topics specifically for the leadership team, because I felt that all the people that we have in LT, they want to be, they want to do the right things, but they do not know how. So for me, that meant that I would be working, and I would give them the hints, insight, and sometimes the coaching, what they should really, take into consideration, what data they can have, what it is that we can do for the people, using my experience.
That is somehow different from the standpoint or the approach that was presented by Mr. Dlouhý. So do you feel that as a leader you have an obligation to, let's say, do more towards your LGBT employees? Do you feel that you need to treat them actually in a slightly different way than all the others?
Well, I do not think that to call it that I will treat them differently. I don't think that this is the right description. I think what we need to do and we need to help generally, the minorities at the workplace is really to help them feel good when they are at work, and help the majority of the people to understand what are the obstacles, what are the barriers, so that we actually remove these barriers. And so it doesn't mean that I want to treat LGBTI people differently. I want that they have actually the same opportunities, and maybe that the people who are naturally privileged in the workspace or in the society, that these privileged people understand how they can support, and how they can actually open the opportunities for the others, because there is really the business case, and we can really, by supporting each other and by opening these opportunities, we help ourselves as teams and we help ourselves as companies, and that's what I really believe in.
Mr. Kadera, unlike Microsoft, Škoda Auta is just starting to engage with LGBT topics at the workplace now. How come? Why not earlier?
Good morning. I think it's not about starting now, it's about speaking about it now. Our history goes 120 back to 1895, and ever since human being or employee has been the most valuable asset we have and we ever had. So having over 40,000 employees and having over 50 nationalities in the company is a key principle that strengthens our business case, that enriches the company, brings new ideas, and COVID phase clearly showed it. We also believe it's sometimes good to first do your homework and then start talking about it. So that's why we already have for a number of years in our collective agreement completely equal conditions, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of gender. So equal pay is a rule for everyone 5 weeks of working of vacation is for everyone, and also additional benefits such extra days off for birth of a child, for registered wedding, or engaging in a partnership when a family member passes away, or when you have someone handicapped, when you need to take care of a child. All these extra benefits are equal to all employees, including LGBT.
In his interview with Adela, Mr. Udar stated that companies which will not engage in diversity and inclusion at their workplace may actually be losing customers and markets. So was this one of the main reasons for Škoda Auto to join the progressively enlarging group of companies who do engage in LGBT issues?
Of course, and in our opinion, it's not only about the LGBT, it's about diversity in general. And what we're seeing now on the labor market is the fight for talents, and the youngsters are not any longer so much interested in how much money they get. They're much more interested in having common values with the company. So we believe our values have to be really clear. Our values have to be equal and have to accept everyone, because we believe that's right. And we also see that's important for our employees, especially for the younger employees.
Could you please tell us what the biggest challenges are for you right now at this initial stage?
In our diversity strategy, we're focusing very much on the role of women in our company. We are a production company, engineering company, so it's much more difficult to engage women and motivate them to join us also in management positions. So that is a big priority of ours. Secondly, we have whole families working in our Škoda team, and parents, be it fathers or mothers on maternity leave, paternity leave. We need to engage them as soon as possible and give them chance to part-time work when they are ready to, because we don't want to lose their talent. And last but not least, we're now focusing very much on unconscious prejudices. We realize that there are a lot of prejudices people don't even think about. So we enrolled trainings for Škoda staff, just pointing out how simple is it to run into a prejudice and how to prevent it, because by definition, any prejudice is wrong from the very beginning.
Mr. Clark, Vodafone Czech Republic won the LGBT Friendly Employer Award consecutively in a row for several years. So do you believe every employer in the Czech Republic should engage in advancement of LGBT workplace equality?
Hi, and thanks very much for having us on here. And we're super proud to have won the award consecutively. It's not an easy journey, and I think in one of your previous interviews, Fabrice was kind of saying it's it takes a while, and it's continuous kind of work with new initiatives, new activities to engage people. But to answer your question, I think the real starting point really is, a belief in inclusion for all, which is kind of something we're really passionate about here, because we know that makes good business sense, but it's also just around human rights. So we know that creating an inclusive environment is good for our people, because people can be more productive, more engaged. We also know, as the previous panelists kind of indicated, we also know that young people kind of want to work for organizations which are more inclusive and more socially responsible. So therefore, that's not only something that we want to believe in, but we also are quite passionate around supporting other organizations kind of, go on that journey as well. So yes, we do believe that organizations should be LGBT inclusive.
Vodafone joined the UN Global LGBT Standards of Conduct for Business. I was wondering how you actually implement them on a local, that's to say, in this case, Czech level, in the Czech environment.
Yeah, so Vodafone was one of the early signatures for the UN standards. And again, the UN standards are global, so they not only apply here in the Czech Republic for us, but they also apply to many different other countries that we work in. And in some other countries that Vodafone works in, it is much more challenging to be an LGBT person. Adopting the standards, I think the first starting point is around policies. Making sure you've got robust policies in place. And actually the research we did with Out Now clearly said that 85% of LGBT people want clear policies that are clearly signposted as being inclusive. So this year when we launched kind of our trans policy, we said we want to kind of support people who are transitioning at work. We want to provide financial support at those critical moments, which would be a clear way of demonstrating we're living up to the standards. but not only for trans, but also other people who are transitioning at critical moments in their life, be it parents, people adopting. Again, we can provide more help and support. So policies is a key starting point, but then training also kind of goes with that as well. So we have to make sure managers feel comfortable kind of creating the conditions where people can be themselves, LGBT and non-LGBT.
Which leads me to my last question towards you, Mr. Clark. Would you say that your, let's say, LGBT friendliness is something that attracted more business and made your employees happier, luckier, more natural in their workplaces?
It's a great question. So we've introduced through our employee engagement surveys, we can get a view around how LGBT people are feeling within the company. We not only do that for LGBT people, but we can look at that from a gender perspective, but also if you're differently abled as well. So I think getting the data actually is really important, because then you can look at it from an engagement perspective. Typically, our LGBT people are more engaged and more positive about working for Vodafone, which is fantastic. So we're obviously doing something right, which is really, really good. But we know there's always more things that we can do. And I think the key thing is just keep listening to our people to help us understand, are there barriers? Do they have concerns? Because we're a large organization and it takes time to bring the entire organization with us.
Now, there's one last thing I'd like to ask all three of you. Do you still encounter colleagues or maybe people from different companies at, I don't know, business meetings, business lunches, that still wonder why you and your companies actually decided to join those new standards? And what do you tell them when they ask you? What do you tell them when they present standpoints that basically contradict this ideology or philosophy that your companies have adopted? Mrs. Sochorova?
Well, yes, I do. I mean, we cannot, presume that there is no challenge ahead of us, that everybody understands and everybody is on the same boat. And this is the kind of the advancement of the society. Some people are more ahead. Some people, need the, I would say, education and understanding. So if I have such an opportunity, I try to actually explain what I see behind. And I try to explain it typically on simple people stories, and for LGBTI people, the story that, I mean, the simple, it's not a, full story, but if you tell to somebody who doesn't realize that if you have somebody closeted at work, that these people would not even share anything from their personal life and always check internally whether they can say something, like what they did over the weekend, that they always try to kind of pretend, and the fact that they are pretending is making them uncomfortable and actually less feeling less included in the workspace. This has many other effects than. This is what I'm trying to explain. Usually, it is a journey with such a people. It doesn't happen overnight that they will immediately say, "Aha!" and I'm fantastic. Now I understand. And I think, and this is what I see as one of my roles, is actually continue this dialogue and restart the dialogue when it somehow disappears sometimes. So that's what we need to do, and I believe that there will be a definitely positive movement, in the future. That's very important.
Mr. Cadera, what do you tell people that challenge your views on LGBT equality at workplace?
Surprisingly, I have received the complete opposite questions more often. Why so late? And my answer was, well, we started to talk about it late. I wouldn't say we started late, and I tell them we prefer to first set policies, do the benefits, make all the conditions equal, and then only start talking about it. And for our board members, this has never been a question, including all the LGBT rights. Of course, in a large corporation, it takes a mind shift, especially of all the managers. So we're very much focusing on bringing the policies, bringing the statements, bringing the values through all the Mannschaft, through all the people, down to every individual employer, because putting it on a website or in a policy or sponsoring an LGBT event doesn't make a difference. Difference is made when every single employee feels this is the value of the company and this is what the company stands for, and I feel it in my daily life.
Mr. Clark, same question for you.
I think it's a super question. And so Vodafone operates in a fairly big ecosystem. And there will always be organizations out there which question kind of some of our approaches and narrative. But the key way really is around education. So we've got a responsibility to bring those organizations kind of with us. We've launched something called Partners with Pride, which is very much around how do we bring our supply chain with us? Because if you're a Vodafone colleague at the moment and you're interacting with someone in our supply chain base, then we want you, feeling comfortable going to one of our suppliers, feeling that you can be yourself, talking about what you did at the weekend. So it's very much around bringing those organizations much closer to us and then helping them understand kind of the journey that we're on. We've also kind of started giving some of our materials, some of our products that we've developed for our own people to members of our supply chain base in order to help them move a bit more quickly, kind of along the journey. So for some issues like LGBT inclusion, it's around just coming together and working, across sector, across industries, because fundamentally we want our people to feel that they can be themselves. And it's not a competitive kind of issue between companies. It's around just creating the right environment for people to, to really excel.
Mrs. Sochorova, Mr. Kadera, Mr. Clark, thank you so much for joining us today. Now you will be receiving some more questions from Adela, who is just joining me on stage right now for more questions.
Thank you to our panelists. It was a truly an amazing and very interesting interview. Please do not despair. We will come back to them. To our panelists, please do not leave us yet. Now it's time, though, to talk to our audience. We asked you to be interactive, and you delivered. We have been receiving a lot of questions, and I will get to them in a minute. But right now, let's see the results of our first poll, where we asked you whether your employer actively works on advancement of LGBT equality at your workplace. We have, can I please ask for the results?
I think it was
74% of you said yes.
Of good news.
Of good news, which is probably not shocking, given that our audience probably consists of people working in companies that are already concerned and conscious. 15% responded that it is a part of the D&I strategy, but is not actively pursued. So there is a room for improvement, but the first steps have been made. 8% of you said no, reach out to us or have a look at the website of Pride Business Forum to find out how you can boost your employer to start. And 3% of you said you do not know. Now let me have a look at the questions that you have been asking us. And there is no denying, the main topic seems to be the interview with Mr. Louhi, which I think could have been expected given the content of the interview. I will maybe turn the question to our panelists. You've had a chance to watch the interview I made with Mr. Louhi. What is your take on it? What do you think about what has been said? Let's start, for example, with Mrs. Sochorova.
Yes, I listened to the interview. I also read the article to understand better the overall context. And for me, I have two takeaways, which first of all, I think it is fantastic that you initiated the dialogue with Mr. Louhi, that you took him, as a, and really, and also from him, it is really good that he accepted this offer and that he had the interview with you. And second of all, I really take this as a typical example of somebody who is maybe from the older generation and doesn't have such a wide experience from the workplace how advancing LGBTI can actually help the overall culture of the company. And he doesn't know how to move forward. That's for me, this is very visible from the interview. He is an intelligent man. However, he needs help. I really believe that he needs help, and especially more if he becomes the Secretary General of OECD. I think that actually he cannot neglect the topics of diversity and inclusion, because this is really helping businesses, and it seems that for him this is a challenge. So I would suggest that you continue working with him.
Mr. Kadera, what's your view?
And I'm happy to help.
I'm sorry, thank you. Thank you, and thank you for the offer to help. I'm sure he will be happy to take you up on that. Mr. Kadera, what's your view?
It refers back to my comment about changing a mindset. I believe that in many cases, the regulation, for instance, equaling the rights of different parts of society, is one thing, but regulation is always behind the trends. And we need to look at trends, not to focus on what's written in the law and only fulfill the legal conditions. We always have to be a few steps ahead and trying to challenge the mindset of the society, of the company, of management of the company. So I believe Mr. Lowy is a good example of people I'm sure we could also potentially have among our employees that need to be educated and that need to be shown what the values of the company are and clearly said they need to change their mindset.
Thank you. And Carl, given the track record of Vodafone in LGBT equality, this is perhaps light years away from the reality of your corporation. What do you think?
Yeah, there were two takeaways for me, really. One is we've obviously got more to do. So we can never rest on our laurels and think we're done, because there's always kind of more to do. So I think that's kind of the first thing. The second thing really is, I mean, some of this is around how do we create change, not only change internally, but also kind of change externally. And one of the great things that I really liked around the UN initiative around creating kind of the global standards was it was very much private sector focused and encouraging companies to engage. And I think there's a real kind of piece here that actually companies can actually make a real positive difference, and actually probably a bigger difference and impact than some of our established institutions, because we probably have more insights and are slightly more in touch with kind of what's actually happening in society than some of our institutions, which do take a while to kind of catch up. So it's just a reminder that when companies kind of come together, they can be a real kind of force for change. And I think that's my big takeaway from that.
Thank you very much. Let me just add that the recommendations we discussed were, of course, voluntary. No corporations in the Chamber of Commerce would be forced to apply them, and Chamber of Commerce is an institution set up by law. I think that closes off the section discussion with our panelists. There are plenty more questions, but we need to keep going, so please excuse me for skipping some of them. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Now, Adela, I was just wondering, what if Mr. Lowy is in a way right? Because fact is that homosexuality or other forms of sexual minorities are not criminalized anymore. On paper, at least, being gay or lesbian or anything else is not something you would be getting discriminated for at a workplace, isn't it?
You're absolutely right. I think, however, that the bar should be a little bit higher than not being criminalized for being lesbian, gay, bisexual, or trans. It is true that on paper, the Anti-Discrimination Act, for example, does prohibit discrimination of LGBT people at workplace. But being a lawyer, I can tell you that laws and reality are sometimes worlds apart. And what is important is not to be driven by our intuitions or by our preconceived notions, but to look at the hard data. And we've done just that. So let me share with you a couple of numbers that will illustrate which problem are we talking about and why are we having these discussions. As I mentioned earlier, 51% of LGBT people in the Czech Republic are not out at workplace, meaning they're hiding their identity. 1/3 of them has been discriminated in the last 5 years, which is 3 times higher than the rest of the population, mind you. 11% of the instances of discrimination took place at workplace, which is the second highest percentage right after education system. And a shocking number comes as last. 91% of these discrimination incidents were never reported. And the respondents tell us that it's mostly because they do not know to whom to turn. The problem of discrimination of LGBT people is not only a problem on a personal level. It does have very severe impacts on the Czech economy at large. A recent study by an organization called Open for Business, which is an association of renowned consulting companies such as McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, or Deutsche Bank, found out that discrimination of LGBT people at workplace in the Czech Republic costs us all astounding 5 billion crowns a year at the least. These are, for example, costs incurred in connection to the increased mental health assistance, a lost investment in education, or investment on return of or changing of employees. We mentioned OECD. OECD ran its own survey into the lives of LGBT people at workplace in 14 countries. And what that survey showed us is that LGBT people, applicants from among the LGBT people, are 50% less likely to be invited to a job interview. They're 7% less likely to be employed than non-LGBT people. Their labor earnings are 4% lower, and they're 11% less likely to hold a high managerial position. So clearly, the numbers tell us unequivocally that there is a problem. And to adopt a position of, I do not mind LGBT people, I do not distinguish between them, I do not care if someone is gay, lesbians, bi, or trans. But I don't think it is a problem I need to tackle at work, and I don't want to take active measures to work on that in my corporation, is in fact, unfortunately, contributing to the problem.
And this is what's coming next, an overview of the situation of LGBT people around the world, coming out testimonials of the Czech LGBT people, and also live discussions with experts on coming out at the workplace. So let's kick off this part again with another Slido question. Please go to www.slide.do, use the hashtag PBF2020 in order to answer our next question, which is, are you out at your workplace? A, I am completely out. B, I am out only to my closest colleagues and team. C, I am completely in the closet. Or D, not applicable. Thank you for answering, for joining, and stay with us.
Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the next keynote speaker of the conference, Mr. Victor Madrigal Borloz. I know Victor personally, and I've met him a couple of times, and I've always admired his ability to make a human connection to his audience, to speak very eloquently, and to call things for what they are. Victor holds a very high position. He is the United Nations independent expert on protection against violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. He has held this position since 2018. And in this capacity, he examines, reports, monitors, and advises on violations of human rights regarding to sexual orientation and gender identity. For example, Victor recently and his team published guidelines called Aspire on how employers should treat LGBT employees during the COVID-19 pandemic. So a very up-to-date document that many employers, I'm sure, will be happy to use. Jan Zika met Victor in a cafe in Washington, D.C. They moved from New York, and they talked about the current situation of LGBT people all around the globe.
Victor, welcome to this Pride Business Forum virtual event.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope that this conference will be highlighting the very real links between businesses and the furtherance of human rights.
So how would you describe the situation of LGBTI people around the world right now?
I think that one could only describe it as deeply contradictory. On the one hand, you know that the rights of LGBT persons is the one issue where we know change is possible within a generation, because we have seen it happen throughout our lifetime. On the other hand, the situation continues to be dire, very difficult in great parts of the world. As we speak today, 69 countries still criminalize homosexuality. That means that 2 billion people live in criminalized environments. And those that are in environments that are not criminalized continue to suffer enormous instances of violence and discrimination when they are LGBT.
Why do you think that populist politicians are now using LGBTI people as scapegoats?
I think that there's a whole mechanism that operates in political discourse through the creation of narratives of otherness. That is an enabling mechanism for torture, for example. To portray people as not quite human, not quite good citizens, not quite moral, is a wonderful way of actually ensuring that violence and discrimination can be perpetrated against them. I think that there's a connectivity in the way that hatred and exclusion agendas work. There's a connectivity of ideological narratives, of political narratives, of religious narratives that travel around the world in social media, in networks, in images and images of images.
Well, who do you think is behind the agenda?
I don't think it's one monolithic force behind these agendas. I think it's a series of agendas. I believe that a common denominator is that many of them have a point of commonality in seeking profit. I think the money comes from people that actually are contributing in churches and in political campaigns around the world.
What do you think we can do to reverse this trend?
I think awareness is important. I think having as many elements of visibility of the realities of LGBT lives. There was some 30 years ago a notion that LGBT persons should be protected from discrimination upon the principle of privacy. It kind of worked this way. That argument went and said, as long as you do whatever you do in the privacy of your bedroom, we should not be concerned about it. But in reality, that doesn't serve the reality of existence of LGBT persons. We all know that in order to have full enjoyment of human rights, you have to occupy public space in your full integrality. You have to occupy public space being able to hold hands with your same-sex partner and kiss them or him or her on the street without fear of being beaten or killed. You have to be able to talk about your family around the water cooler on Monday morning and what you did the weekend without having to have your existence be existing only in the shadows. You have to be able to have protection to your health in a manner that corresponds to your particular sexual life. All of these are aspects in which the bedroom protection doesn't work.
Why do you think that businesses, that corporations, play an important role in advancing LGBTI rights?
The role of businesses is absolutely crucial. Who else is going to have a decisive intervention in inclusive employment but businesses? Who else is going to actually have an important input in these issues of homelessness if it's not companies that actually do building and property management? Who is going to actually ensure inclusion in the arts and in sports if it's not businesses that actually are promoting entertainment, are promoting sports? Inclusion is actually fundamental in all of these cases.
What would you advise to companies that want to start implementing some of these ideas?
I think a very important part of this is to just have a policy on inclusion, to set the principles upon which this policy is founded, to understand the communities that we're talking about when we talk about sexual diversity and gender diversity, and to ensure that their voices are heard in the development and the monitoring and the evaluation of this policy.
Victor, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Já jsem byla ženatá, nebo přesněji řečeno ženatý, a mám syna. Synovi bylo 13, byl v pubertě a bylo to vlastně hrozně obtížné právě pro tu rodinu. V té práci nebo mezi přátelema to už je možná trošku jako jednodušší. Tak zpočátku jsem vlastně nevěděla, jak v té nové roli budu fungovat. Jestli si člověk představí nějaký tender, kde se v podstatě zvažuje každý detail, tak osoba vlastně kreativního ředitele, který se mění v kreativní ředitelku, může být problematická. Já tenkrát jsem opustila vlastně prostředí teda těch velkých agentur, začala jsem pracovat na volné noze. To, co vlastně dřív dokončoval tým, tak jsem se naučila dokončovat sama. Přišlo mi, že takhle budu nezávislejší a že třeba nemusím tu agenturu, řekněme, ohrozit a že se nemusím cítit nejistě. Samozřejmě my o tom víme od dětství, že se takhle cítíme, ale ty lidi o tom netušejí vůbec nic. Já si myslím, že pro to okolí je to možná ještě daleko těžší, než pro toho člověka, který prochází tou tranzicí. Ten člověk, který prochází tou tranzicí, si vlastně splní svůj životní sen.
V bance pracuji už víc než 20 let a přiznat to, že dávám přednost ženám, mi trvalo hodně dlouho, asi víc než 10 let. Když jsme se bavili o vztazích, jakože jsem říkala moje druhá polovička a bylo mi v tom ne úplně dobře. Ale bála jsem se. Bála jsem se vlastně všem otevřeně říct, že jsem lesba a že to mám prostě jinak než většina lidí. Ten zlomový moment pro mě bylo, když se mojí partnerce, když se nám společně narodila holčička. A to bylo před 7 lety, kdy jsem najednou měla tak obrovskou radost a tak strašně jsem ji chtěla se všemi sdílet, se všemi svými kolegy a v celém týmu, který vedu, že jsem se rozhodla, že to prostě musím nějak říct. A hrozně pěkné pro mě bylo to, jak to vlastně všichni hezky vzali. Nesetkala jsem se, a může to být jenom můj filtr, ale nesetkala jsem se s žádnou reakcí, která by byla prostě záporná nebo nějaká odmítavá. Bylo to hrozně osvobozující, ten pocit, že jsem to konečně celá já.
Řekl bych, že to byla nejtěžší doba asi mýho života, protože vlastně jsem se ptal sám sebe, kým jsem. A dost dlouho mi trvalo, než jsem si na tu otázku dokázal sám odpovědět. Dceři bylo 1,5 roku a v podstatě byl jsem k ní hodně citově vázaný. Manželka v tom byla úplně nevinně a já jsem prostě věděl, že to takhle dál nejde. Když se na to podívám z pohledu mojí práce, pracuji v energetickém průmyslu v jedné americké firmě už 16. rokem a v té době, když jsem vlastně procházel tady tím osobním coming outem ve svém osobním životě, tak jsem absolutně neměl myšlenky na to, abych o tom dokázal mluvit v práci. Musel jsem předstírat, že žiju s ženou a musel jsem při každém, příběhu o tom, kde jsem byl na víkend, mluvit o tom, že jsem tam byl s ní a ne s ním. A postupem času mi to bylo čím dál tím víc nepříjemný, takže jsem se spíš začal těm věcem vyhybat. A jednoho dne, když jsem přišel do práce, tak v kanceláři na chodbě visel velký plakát a na něm byly 2 za sebe držící se mužské ruce. Na dalším byly 2 holky, které se držely za ruku a na třetím byly kluk s holkou, který se drží za ruku. A byl pod tím nádherný slogan, že vlastně oslavujeme lásku každého druhu. A v ten moment já jsem si říkal, co se vlastně může stát, když se vyautuju. Ta firma to podporuje. Asi tady fakt můžu být sebou. To mě prostě nakoplo a jednoho krásného dne jsem to udělal.
And here we are for our second live panel discussion. I am very pleased to welcome Mr. Aleš Kabylka, psychotherapist and professional oversight of the Crisis and Suicide Prevention Portal for LGBT people, www.zbarvouven.cz. Mr. Kabylka, good morning.
Good morning, nice to meet you.
And also with us is Mr. Michal Dumkovský, LGBT plus ERG leader at IVN Czech Republic. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Good morning, gentlemen, and to all of you who are watching us online, please feel free to address any questions you might have to our panelists via Slido. We will get to them right after this panel discussion I will be having with them. It will be Adela who will again speak on behalf of you and ask the questions you will have asked via slido.com. Thank you for that. Mr. Kabylka, those were three quite powerful stories that we've seen. From your experience, would you say that it is still difficult for Czech LGBT people to come out at their workplace?
You are absolutely right that these cases were quite difficult, and what is common to all of three of them is that we don't know how supportive was environment on the working place, but what we know for sure that it was difficult for them. I'm very glad that this conference takes place, and we have to be aware that supportive or open environment on working place is one part of to do coming out. The second part is personality or our inner issues.
Mr. Dumkovský, if you allow me on a more personal note, do you feel this was your case too? How long did you had to think about whether or not you would come out in front of your team? How hard was it?
I was actually in this good situation that when I came out at work, I was working for an organization in Northern Ireland, in Belfast, and I was welcomed with open arms. My team and my whole team that I was working with was extremely supportive. And moving to IBM, I was a little bit apprehensive because I honestly didn't know it was so, it was so different in Northern Ireland. And then on my first day, I have found out that there are completely supportive of the LGBT community. IBM has a long-standing history of support, so I knew I'm in a good organization, and that came also from my immediate team, from my colleagues, from other teams that I was working with. That my sexuality was absolutely no issue with anyone. I was getting supported from all around.
In other words, does that mean that there was no real trigger that somehow pushed you to come forward? And by the way, I love your scarf.
Oh, thank you. I made it myself as part of our ERG. We are dabbling in knitting. So yeah, and I was actually making that scarf and showing it during our last Pride Business Forum meeting in the summer. And I promised I will show it off during the conference. So there you go.
Good. It gets more and more famous.
Yes, it will be. So there was no trigger. I wanted to sort of introduce myself, and I didn't want to hide the aspect of my sexuality, even though it shouldn't really be. It shouldn't be. I really don't discuss anybody's sexuality with them. It's not of no consequence to me. But at the same time, I didn't want to have the need to edit all my thoughts before they came out, before I was speaking. So what did you do last weekend? I went with my friends to a Pride event, or we organized a LGBT event in our local site here. I didn't want to have that edit, right? So I said, right, okay, I will come out with it, and that was the only reason for me to have a coming out.
Mr. Kabylka, what are the usual obstacles or the most frequent ones that you've come across at your counseling service?
Mm-hmm. One of the most is fear. Fear in general. It can be caused by outer conditions and mostly also our inner conditions. we have to gain some energy to say what is difficult for us, what is connected with fear, and to gain this energy, it is supportive to have some people in family or the online advisory center as we have, where you can share it, where you can do it at the first time and to see if it was really so difficult or not. And as we have seen from the videos, what is very often common with coming out is big relief and saying to myself or to saying that why I was waiting so long or why I didn't said it earlier.
From a psychological point of view, is living with a secret the same thing as living with a lie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Living with a secret, living with a lie creates a tension. The tension grows up, and it is maybe surprisingly, but it serves us, because if the tension grows up, the energy which it creates also grows up, and one day it is so unbearable that there is some small trigger to see somebody on a poster or the child was born, some trigger which will trigger us. Enough is enough, and we go out.
Now, from your experience, is it actually easier to come out at a younger age, and does it get harder and harder when you get older and older and more used to maybe living in a certain form of lie?
Yes, definitely. As you mentioned previously, if we create even a small lies or not saying the whole truth or half a truth, it creates some net around us, and the more it is, the more powerful the net is, then it is more harder. And my personal experience in our online advisory center, the younger people are much more open and express themselves more easily than the older.
Mr. Damkovsky, why do you believe it is important to break this secret and come out at the workplace as soon as possible?
Well, I'm gonna talk about my own experience, right? So in my work, I need to deal with a number of issues, of new developments, of working towards our client success. And I personally do not want to spend some of my time thinking, if I'm going to say something, or the way I word things, or will this going to be conceived or seen as me being gay or straight or whatever, right? I don't want to have that. And that obviously stifles creativity. That also stifles, your ability to interact with your colleagues, because you always have to feel on guard, right? You always have to feel like there is a part of you that you have to keep hidden. And this is one of the things that IBM is making sure that every single IBMer brings their whole self to work. Right, so it doesn't matter what sexuality you are, it doesn't matter what background you come from, it doesn't matter what color skin you have. You just bring your whole self to work, and then you can devote yourself entirely to your tasks, your team, what you need to do, obviously to make our client success. And I personally have to say I've been blessed with the team that I have in IBM, because all of them are extremely supportive. I get support from my direct managers. They ask me questions sometimes about, LGBT issues, because I think that knowledge sharing is extremely important. And it is good that we can build that relationship, and we don't have to worry about our backgrounds. Or, if I went with my partner to a party, and I then have to convert from he to she, because I'm afraid that I will be, either judged somehow in some way, or, my ability to advance in my work. I don't have to worry about that. All I need to worry or care about is, being the best at what I do, and making sure that the company I work for is successful.
On the other hand, there's a large scale of, let's say, psychological structures, personalities. You have more or less discreet people. people that are even straight that will never share with anyone whether they are single or dating. What their personal life looks like is something they think is a utterly private thing. So why does that not apply to sexual minorities? Why should it not stay in the private sector if those people wish to keep it that way? What would you say to them? And that's a question for both of you.
Okay, so maybe I'll try first. So yeah, bursting out of the closet, right, with rainbow flying all over me and stuff. Right, I'm a very extrovert person, right? So I don't mind, but at the same time, it is the matter of everybody's approach to their private life, right? If they don't, and I have colleagues like that, if they don't talk and don't volunteer too much information about their private life, that's their choice, and that's the way they want to work, and that's fine with me. But at the same time, I don't want anyone around me to feel like they need to hide anything, that they need to feel, and it's not, and as I said, it's not about bursting out of the closet, you know, rainbows flying all around you. It's all about not feeling afraid to say something, not editing in your head words before they come out, because you might be afraid that, you know, somebody will react to something.
Mr. Kabilka?
Yeah. As we discussed previously, to hide something or not to express myself fully creates tension, creates difficulties. You have to think if you said something to somebody or to somebody else, different version. So if you live in the truth, it is so natural and so relieving or much more easier. And I know that it is not important to do it as soon as possible. Everybody needs some its own time to do coming out, and it is important to be in a supportive environment.
And still only 24% of Czech LGBT people are comfortable or ready to come out of their closet at their workplace. Does that necessarily mean that the Czech environment is hostile towards those issues?
From my point of view, I don't know what is under these numbers. What I face daily is the case to case, and my opinion is that it is the personal issues like a fear and so on are very often not based on real situation around me.
Thank you. Mr. Damkovsky, same question for you. Knowing that you have a, let's say, a bonus or an advantage that you can compare with Poland, maybe the hostility to differences is an even greater issue there. I don't know. Tell me about it.
Well, I'm not even going to touch Poland, right? No, saying this, no. As a Polish person, it is really disheartening for me to see what is happening in my home country, and it's not only about the LGBT issues; it's about general, you know, the society, and that's what I mean. You know, it would be a much longer conversation. But what I noticed in Czech Republic is Czech people are amazingly open to the LGBT community. However, I think what more needs to be done, and the work that, you know, we are doing at IBM, our colleagues at Vodafone, Microsoft, and many more companies are doing, is making sure that the young people and also the people that are sort of, you know, older my age and so on, know that they can be themselves at work, right? And we know that many people are actually going back into the closet after they finish university and start working. And this is very often because they don't know, either there's no open support for the LGBT community, and, you know, going back to the interview from the beginning of the conference, I don't want to be treated different. I don't want to be put on some sort of pedestal and say, yeah, look how fabulous we are. I can do that through my own work if I need to. What I want to do is I want to be treated exactly the same like everybody else. I want to be treated equally. And I think this is the difference that people need to understand. And also many companies that don't have openly supporting policies for diversity and inclusion, that's what they need to start showing. You know, as we recruit, we are showing you can be yourself when you join us. You can be your whole self when you join us. So this is extremely important. And that's why not many people are coming out, because maybe they don't see that support.
Now, as the next slide shows, the number one reason people are not coming out at the workplace is that they are afraid of the way their colleagues might react. Furthermore, there's a fear linked to their working environment deterioration or to the possibility that their career prospects could be in danger. Is there anything surprising to you looking at those results, Mr. Kabelka?
Not at all. As I said, the fear is crucial in the people, and my experiences also the business experiences, because I work also on a computer company. It is that there was no such culture, but it's only my experience. So I'm curious about other perspectives.
How do you explain that the fear of personal reactions is greater than the fear concerning career prospects? Isn't that surprising?
Mm-hmm. It depends in how the culture around me is, and it also how experiences with coming out are. If I had easy coming out with my friends or in my family, or then I have a positive experience, and I bear it to the future as it is not such a big deal. If my first experiences are not so positive, or environment around me is saying, or I hear that LGBT is crap and so on, then it creates a fear and tension, and it is much more difficult. So from this perspective, it is the numbers are not surprising.
Now, there's a theory that in countries where more than 50% of the society personally know an LGBT person, laws and environment are more LGBT friendly. According to CVVM, only 39% of Czechs personally know an LGBT person. You can also see the change comes rather slowly, because in 2014, that's to say 6 years ago, it was 31% of Czechs. Do you believe that coming out may actually help to shift societal attitudes in favor of LGBT people? Can it not have the opposite effect?
No, definitely not. The coming out, each coming out serves to the others, and it is a matter of somehow normality in the society, that if it is quite a common thing that somebody in my environment is LGBT and I know it, then it is not so surprising in business environment and so on. So it really serves each coming out to the other coming outs in the society.
Mr. Domkovský, I suppose you agree with this. Everyone should come out. And by the way, I would add another question to that. What should people who feel or have the impression that they have a colleague or a friend they suspect might be gay or lesbian or of another sexual minority, and they are not sure about what to do, what would you advise to them from your personal experience? Did anyone help you on your way, or did you help somebody because of a good suspicion you've had?
Right. This is a really good question, right? And I think many of my friends and colleagues would say, definitely not going like, are you gay? Are you lesbian? Are you bisexual? Because this is obviously that question that is always might get people who are not maybe openly out or may want to think about coming out. That might be something that is going to be completely counterproductive. I'm going to actually use some of the words that my colleague Axel Wedler was talking about. Supporting people with HIV. We had another workshop showing that you understand that there are people of different sexual orientation in the world. Showing that you understand, saying maybe talking about event that you have attended or considering going to an event, saying, oh, I've attended this this conference, and I've heard about this conference. It's a really interesting subject for me, and I really support what's happening. Showing your support without pointing the finger will actually make the person that you're considering talking about LGBT issues, or you consider might be LGBT, that will show them that they can trust you, that you're a person that is open-minded, that you that they can come up to you. Because I think it's all about having a safe space and knowing that if you're going to come out, you're not going to, no stones will be thrown, so to speak. That the person that you will talk with will understand you and will support you. And I think that creating that environment of support and understanding, that's the most important. Asking questions, yeah, that might come later, because there are things that I discuss with my colleagues about various LGBT issues that maybe they're just curious about, and they want to learn more about it, especially around trans issues. I personally had to learn a lot about trans issues, and I'm really grateful for my trans friends who were able to be there for me, so I could understand, I could support.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being part of the show. I'm saying that under the influence of the multicolor scarf. I feel more at a show than at a conference, which is a good news. Basically, maybe less people are falling asleep watching us, which would be great. We are further than in the middle of our conference, because this was meant to be a 2 and something hour-long conference. Just saying this to the audience that might or might also not get tired, but given the fact some of you are in pajamas, I thought this may be a useful information. Gentlemen, please stay with us, as I will be joined here on stage by Adela, who is coming right across to ask some more questions coming from the audience in pajamas or not.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you to our panelists. Also, thank you to Czeslaw, the director of Pride Business Forum, for finding these excellent personalities and people to talk to us with their amazing stories. Now, it's time to get personal. Wake up from your couches. We're going to talk about the poll. We're going to talk about what you told us, and then we're going to take some of the questions you asked our panelists. So the second poll we put up was personal, and we asked you, are you out at your workplace? Let's see the results on our screen. 61% of you says, I am completely out. Congratulations. 22% of you says this question does not apply to them. 15% say that they're out only to the closest colleagues and the closest team. And 3% says, I am completely in the closet. Now, these results are slightly more optimistic than the overall situation in the Czech Republic. As we heard before, 51% of Czech people, LGBT people, are not out at workplace. But still, obviously, there is a long way to go and a long way ahead. Coming out might seem like a very, and it is, in fact, a very personal decision, something that it can never be rushed, and it has to be done at one's pace and at one's timing. At the same time, it has far-reaching consequences far beyond our personal sphere. Studies show us that people who do personally know someone who is LGBT are far more likely to be supportive of LGBT equality. So in fact, by coming out, we're also doing some sort of a mini activism, if you will. Now, let's have a look at the questions you have asked our panelists. First, one short technical question. There are many questions on whether the recording of the conference will be available after the end of the live stream. It will be indeed. It will be either on YouTube or on the website of Pride Business Forum. So don't despair. You will be able to watch it on a loop 10 times a day. Now, there is a question for Michal. Michal, do you think that the situation in Brno, where you work, is worse in terms of companies supporting LGBT equality, and also in terms of people being out?
Okay, so companies supporting LGBT equality in Brno, I have to say that I don't think so. We have organized a workshop inviting companies from the Brno area to join us to discuss LGBT issues at their workplaces. And initially, when we were organizing, and Pride Business Forum helped us with that, so thank you very much for that. We really appreciate your help, as always. we have been we have expecting maybe 10 organizations join us, and we got over 20. So it shows that LGBT issues and supporting LGBT workforce is something that is close to much more to the hearts of many more organizations that we might think. It was great to discuss the LGBT issues with those organizations. So I think in Brno, we just need to organize more events, and we will be able to spread the knowledge of the LGBT issues in the workplace to many more organizations.
Thank you. Now the next question goes to Aleš. Aleš, have you seen some changes in the demand towards your counseling line, Zbarvo, during the pandemic?
Actually, not at all. We were asking this question in the spring, or when the first wave was present, and the change, only change which we saw or which were present in our advisory center, that people were spending time much more together as they were in a house, and the personal issues came out much more quick in a much more faster way than if children are going to schools and so on. So this was the change that for example, some coming outs were much more quicker, I can say.
Thank you very much to both of you. Again, we need to speed this up, and unfortunately, I cannot ask you all the questions that are there. But thank you for being with us and for talking to us today. And now I'll be giving the floor over to Emma, who is in charge of introducing the thing I forgot last year, which is our award ceremony. Stay tuned.
That is right. In these gloomy times, we asked our next speaker to bring some joy and festive atmosphere. So ladies and gentlemen, let us now enjoy See My Life from a secret place in Prague, the LGBT-friendly Employer 2020 Awards. Those are hosted by my friend, actor Petr Vančura, actor who you can enjoy actually once theaters will reopen at the National Theatre in the play I Am a Country. Petr will now reveal to us who will be awarded the 4 following prizes. The first one, Pride Business Forum Hero 2020 Awards for individuals with outstanding contributions to LGBT workplace equality. Second, LGBT-friendly employer for companies who in 2019 were the best in LGBT workplace equality. Third, Big Step Forward for companies who in the last year made the biggest advancement. And last but not least, the best employee-driven initiative. So Petr, tell us who won.
Hello everybody, my name is Peter. Welcome in this little, small, but very LGBT-friendly apartment. I have such an honor to announce LGBT-friendly Employer Awards of 2020. But first of all, please, let me introduce you Pride Business Forum Heroes. Hey, here they are. Michal Nebeský, City. Dennis Wagenham, British Council. Anita Zubák, MSD, Czech Republic. Hélène Hussard, ČSOB, and Karl Clark from Vodafone, Czech Republic. Congratulations to you all. You're such a good people. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's see which companies gets the awards. Big Step Forward Award receives ČSOB, Československá obchodní banka, ČSOB. Employee Driven Initiatives Award goes to ExxonMobil. Congratulations! LGBT Friendly Employer Award second runner-up receives Accenture. Woo, yeah! And now, gold medal, and now, gold medal. LGBT Friendly Employer Award goes to Vodafone and IBM. Whoa! This is for the first time in history of the award that two companies received the highest award. Wow, I'm so lucky. This is such a special year, so special. That means that I have a song for you. It's called the winning song. Happy winning to you, happy winning to you, happy winning, dear LGBT-friendly companies, people and heroes. Happy winning to you.
Since 2018, the Pride Business Forum platform has been giving out the LGBT Friendly Employer Award. It thereby increases the visibility of employers who take steps supporting the inclusion of LGBT employees. The winner is selected by an expert jury who evaluates their strategic approach, specific projects and tools used, even whether the topic of LGBT equality is supported by leadership and communicated internally and externally. This year, IBM won the award for the first time. What are you the most proud of in your company in terms of LGBT workplace equality?
The two achievements that we were most proud of were introduction of the gender-neutral signage on toilets in all IBM buildings in Czech Republic. I was really happy when one of my trans colleagues messaged me with words, finally I have a toilet I'm not afraid to use, it's really for me. As a person identifying as a cis man, I have never thought how much of a problem a simple thing as going to the toilet can be until we have started talking about introducing the signs and what would that bring to the greater IBMer community. The second one was the workshop we have delivered in cooperation with RWS Moravia, which gathered representatives from several businesses to discuss LGBT issues in our region of the Czech Republic.
Vodafone is a champion of LGBT diversity for the third time in a row.
We announced two groundbreaking policies this year. The first was parental leave, where we give 16 weeks paid parental leave to anyone who adopts, which is inclusive of same-sex couples. We also announced and launched our transitioning at work policy, which gives financial benefits to people who do transition at work and they transition gender. So the key thing for us is around passion of our people. So whether that's around senior leaders kind of being out there speaking to the Prime Minister, engaging on equal marriage, whether it's around our ERG actively engaging in Pride, whether it's around supporting other companies help on their journey to becoming more LGBT inclusive.
Accenture is also a repeat winner of honours for leadership commitment.
Well, year 2019 for Accenture was focused on the mental health of its employees. We have introduced and trained a group of mental health allies, with a few of them being really focused on the mental health in the LGBT community. And on top of that, our employee assistance program that provides free of charge counseling and mental health support to our employees has been last year also expanded for the same-sex partners of our employees.
Cheerso Bay only became a member of Pride Business Forum last year. Of course, it became heavily involved.
I am very proud on our top management that approved the membership of Pride Business Forum very smoothly and easily and very fastly. I think that there is still gap at the market in the number of companies that are members of Pride Business Forum compared to the number of companies that openly support diversity topic. If we can inspire at least one another big financial institution or other big institution to become a member, I will be very honored.
ExxonMobil has repeatedly attracted attention for its activities, which are organized by LGBT employees and their allies.
One of our greatest achievements from last year was the superb allies engagement that we had. We increased a lot our numbers of allies. We had events directly just for them. They supported us, they presented for us, they helped us organize events, and they are a pillar stone in our ERG work.
Your company too may become the bearer of the title LGBT-friendly employer. Become a member of Pride Business Forum and register for the 2021 competition.
Congratulations to everyone. You can find all the relevant information on the awards and the recipients online on our website or via social media. And I would like to make a promise that as soon as it will physically be possible, we will, of course, organize with great pleasure an official award ceremony. Now, coming up next, we will focus on the future of diversity and inclusion in post-pandemic times. However, before that, let us turn to Slido. Go to www.sli.do, #PBF2020, and please answer our last question for today. Do you think it is important that employers stay focused on LGBT workplace equality even in times of economic or other crisis? A, yes, just like before. B, yes, even more now than before. C, no. Or D, I have no opinion. So please do tell us whether or not you have an opinion and which one that might be. Thank you so much. Stay with us.
And the question of whether pandemic somehow impacts the work of diversity and inclusion of companies was also a topic of discussion with our next keynote speaker, which is Mrs. Dagmar Kuchtová. Mrs. Kuchtová is a board member of the Confederation of Trade and Transport, and she is also the first elected woman to be a general secretary of the organization. This is the largest association of employers in the Czech Republic, representing over 1.3 million employees. Now that's a large number. She's also a great believer in the advantages of diversity and inclusion, which I had the chance to experience firsthand. But she does not only talk about it, she takes action. She was part of the delegation of 17 CEOs and high managers from large corporations that asked for a meeting with the Prime Minister, pleading him to push forward the bill on equal marriage. As you might recall, the bill has been sitting and has been neglected in the Parliament for the last 2.5 years without one single vote. I was pleasantly surprised to see her enthusiasm and a true conviction about the importance of the work on diversity and inclusion, especially considering that she does work for an association which is male-dominated and focused on, let's say, the traditional industry.
Paní ředitelko, dobrý den. Děkujeme za váš čas, který jste si udělala na náš rozhovor. Já jsem koukala na vedení Svazu průmyslu a dopravy. Tam sedí 19 lidí a z toho 3 ženy. Před 100 lety by to asi bylo něco neslíchaného, byť i jenom ty 3 ženy. Co se muselo za těch 100 let stát, aby tohle bylo dneska možné?
Dobrý den, já jsem ráda, že máme možnost si o tomto tématu promluvit. Ano, to máte pravdu. Já osobně ty 3 ženy pokládám za úspěch, i teda v mnohem kratší než 100leté historii svazu, protože vlastně já jsem historicky úplně první žena ředitelka a historicky úplně první volená dáma do představenstva byla paní Jaburková s IBM, takže se tak snažíme postupně tu pozici žen v managementu tady Svazu průmyslu a dopravy, což možná i trochu z logiky věci. Máme tady průmyslové firmy, byla spíše doména pánů, ale jako mění se to.
Pojďme teďka k LGBT diverzitě, což je téma, jehož se přímo dotýká naše konference Pride Business Forum. Co si myslíte, že v této oblasti můžeme udělat a škodí českému hospodářství to, že existují LGBT lidé, kteří nemohou naplno rozvinout potenciál?
Tak začnu od konce. Tím z mého pohledu jednodušším jednoznačně škodí, protože to je i vlastně názor, který jsme prezentovali před rokem na schůzce s panem premiérem a s dalšími firmami, zejména v této době, kdy, i když teď máme koronakrizi a možná se to zdá, jako že to tak není, ale pořád je nedostatek špičkových odborníků a talentovaných lidí. A v této komunitě prokazatelně spousta takových lidí je. A tím jsme argumentovali panu premiérovi, že v podstatě ti lidé, kteří často pracují nebo rádi by pracovali v globálních společnostech, tak pokud si budou vybírat, v které zemi v Evropě to místo chtějí získat, tak samozřejmě tohle hraje velkou roli.
A jedno z těch konkrétních doporučení bylo třeba jaksi vyrovnání nespravedlnosti nebo nerovnosti, která existuje v zákonech, ve vnitřních předpisech společnosti. To znamená, to, co zákon nyní nedělá, do té míry, do jaké to ty firmy mohou udělat, by to vyrovnali ve svých interních předpisech. Je to něco, co jste s vašimi členy probírali a máte na to nějakou reakci?
Reakci na to nemáme, ale budeme se tomu určitě věnovat, protože to mně osobně přijde jako výborná cesta, jak to trochu zlepšit. Jo? Samozřejmě optimální by bylo, kdyby to bylo dáno zákonem nebo legislativně, ale pokud to tak není a nejspíš teda v nejbližší době bude obtížné to prosadit, tak ty interní směrnice těch firm tohle můžou úplně v pohodě nahradit.
Svaz průmyslu a dopravy každý rok připravuje nějaké svoje prohlášení, to je takový seznam jeho priorit. V tom programu na rok 2020, já se tady teďka pomůžu textem, je uvedeno, že svaz bude podporovat aktivity firem spojené s politikou rovnosti pohlaví a diverzity a lidskými právy, ale vždy s důrazem na dobrovolnost a omezování administrativních a finančních nákladů s tím spojených. Co se vám v tom již povedlo realizovat a nebo co plánujete do budoucna?
Fakt je ten, že do toho programového dokumentu loni se to dostalo v podstatě i v návaznosti tady na to jednání u premiéra, kdy jsme to tady s kolegy pokládali za vhodné to tam zařadit. A letos jsme ten dokument připravovali teď vlastně v posledních dnech a tím, jak to všechno přebylo koronavirus, tak v tuto chvíli to tam nemáme, tuhle větu nebo podobnou větu, ale mohu slíbit, že se tomu věnovat budeme. Primárně se pokusíme taky podpořit to, aby se v tom parlamentu trošku s tím něco už konečně stalo. A určitě budeme hledat nějaký způsob, jak těm firmám doporučovat srovnávat těmi interními předpisy tu díru v těch zákonech. To si myslím, že by mohla být taková naše role, jak to trošku někam posunout a zdůrazňovat to, že i ta čísla, co jste říkala, minus 20-30% produktivitě, to samozřejmě je velký problém. No, možná, že bychom se mohli zajímat i o to třeba, jak těm firmám vysvětlovat, aby trošku dodali odvahy těm lidem, aby ten coming out teda udělali, protože možná je to někdy od špatné komunikaci z obou stran, že ten člověk se třeba zbytečně bojí, anebo neví, jak to má udělat, že asi nepřijde do firmy a neřekne, tak já jsem gay nebo já jsem lesba a co budeme dělat. Takže možná i tohle by byla dobrá věc, najít nějakou cestu, jak ty firmy trošku učit, jak s těmi lidmi jednat.
Každopádně, ať už malé nebo velké firmy, nikdo neunikl pandemii tenhle rok a ty dopady pocítí asi všichni. Mnozí ekonomové a sociologové se shodují v tom, že jedna z cest z pandemie, nebo respektive jeden ze způsobů, jak se vyhnout těm negativním dopadům, je vzít to jako příležitost a začít přemýšlet trošku jinak, než jak jsme přemýšleli dosud.
a využít potenciály, které dosud využity nebyly, což je třeba potenciál žen nebo LGBT lidí, kteří dosud měli nějaké bariéry k tomu plnému zapojení do práce. Myslíte si, že to je také nikoli jediná, ale jedna z cest, jak vlastně tu pandemii využít jako příležitost?
Určitě, protože ono možná to ještě není tak úplně zjevné, ale určitě to změní mnoho a hlavně v myšlení nás všech, že jo? Musíme prostě s tím nějakým způsobem žít a adaptovat se na to, že se ty podmínky mění, ta společnost se mění. A určitě tohle je dobrá příležitost, jak ty lidi třeba víc zapojit.
Paní ředitelko, já vám moc děkuji za rozhovor.
Já také moc děkuji a doufejme, že se nám to podaří společně někam posunout.
Welcome back to the studio. Our next keynote speaker does not need a great introduction. He is a very well-known figure in the Czech Republic. He is the mayor of Prague, Mr. Zdeněk Hřib. He has proven over and over again that he is a true champion of diversity and inclusion. Even though, as he puts it himself, he leads quite a traditional life. He has 3 children with one woman. But he still believes in an individual freedom of each one of us. Being a mayor of Prague, our discussion naturally turned towards cities. When the consulting firm Mercer ran a large study among the largest cities in the world, looking at the quality of life people have living in these cities, Prague ranked 69th. Another think tank called Open for Business, which, as I mentioned earlier, comprises firms such as McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, or Deutsche Bank, cross-checked this list against the conditions in which LGBTI people live in these countries. And the clear result was that the top 10 cities in the list do provide for marriage equality or are about to do so, as is the case of Switzerland. And the bottom 10 either criminalize homosexuality or discriminate LGBT people in any other way. So naturally, the link between quality of life for everyone and the situation of LGBTI people was one of the topics I discussed with the mayor. Apart from the things the city has done for LGBTI people, why do they do them at all? What is their plan for the future and how the pandemic might have affected these plans? We're waiting for the clip. Pane primátore, dobrý den. A děkujeme, že jste si na nás udělal čas v době volební i pandemické. Vy jste jako první podepsal podporu mezi primátory a starosty podporu manželství pro všechny. Praha se připojila k takzvané síti Fast Track Cities, tedy měst, které se snaží bojovat s pohlavně přenosnými nemocemi. Zároveň symbolicky jste podpořili Prague Pride jak vyvěšením vlajky, tak účastí na pochodu. Proč to děláte? Proč je to pro lidi v Praze dobré?
Tak mně to přijde jako zcela logické, protože žijeme přece jenom v roce 2020 a já vlastně nevidím důvod, proč ne. Proč bychom neměli říkat, že to město vlastně potřebuje lidi všeho druhu, nebo jak bych to řekl, prostě to město, každé velkoměsto je vlastně založené na tom, že přitahuje kreativní lidi, přitahuje chytré lidi a pochopitelně není možné je třídit podle nějakých barev nebo nějakých jiných kritérií, protože ty inovace, změny, nové objevy, to je vlastně všechno záležitost, která vzniká v tom městě díky tomu, že je právě tím tavícím kotlem těch kultur a dalších rozmanitostí.
Máte nějakou osobní zkušenost nebo osobní motivaci s tím, proč vy sám podporujete svobodu a rovnost LGBT lidí?
No, jak už jsem říkal, to je záležitost, kterou já považuji spíš jakoby za samozřejmost, než za něco, co by se muselo nějakým způsobem zdůvodňovat. Ale třeba já osobně vlastně žiju takový, řekl bych, velice konzervativní život. Mám 3 děti, všechny s jednou manželkou a vlastně to, co ze mě dělá toho liberála, je v podstatě to, že já ten svůj životní styl vlastně nikomu necpu. A protože žiju ve městě, tak jsem ten městský liberál, ale myslím, že to je takový jako návod, který by třeba někteří lidé možná mohli se nad tím jako zamyslet, jestli skutečně je nezbytné, aby jako vnucovali lidem kolem sebe ten svůj způsob života jako ten jediný správný.
Co plánujete do budoucna?
Tak z mého pohledu by bylo nejlepší nějakým způsobem potlačit ve sněmovně to manželství pro všechny. To tedy momentálně se nějakým způsobem zaseklo na té národní úrovni. Praha ty hlasy ve sněmovně nemá. Ale myslím, že pomalu nadchází teda čas na ten plán B, když to tak řeknu. To bylo to, co jsem zmiňoval i tehdy v kampani. A to je to, že bychom mohli zkusit tedy vlastně simulovat tu rovnoprávnost, aspoň na pracovišti, tedy z pohledu zaměstnavatele, u těch registrovaných partnerství, aby měli registrovaní partneři vlastně stejné výhody z hlediska zaměstnavatele, jako mají manželé. Jinak nepochybně budeme pokračovat dál v tom, co děláme. To je primárně tedy deklarativní podpora. I to má svůj význam, když to tedy srovnám minimálně s těmi místy, kde se vydali opačnou cestou. Ale pochopitelně se podíváme i do zahraničí, kde co mají vyzkoušené pro podporu diverzity a nějakým způsobem se z toho poučíme. Přece jenom já tady vidím určité rezervy v té diverzitě i tady na magistrát.
Měli byste tedy do budoucna zájem i jako Praha, jako zaměstnavatel vlastně zlepšovat to pracovní prostředí tak, aby bylo otevřenější všem?
No určitě ano, protože, jak už jsem zmiňoval, to, že města jsou centry inovace, vyplývá z toho, že určitým způsobem vnitřně podporují tu diverzitu a z mého pohledu totéž platí i v rovině zaměstnavatele. Prostě pokud chcete mít nějakým způsobem tu organizaci postavenou tak, že se někam posouvá, tak se té diverzitě nemůžete bránit. Naopak byste ji měla nějakým způsobem organicky podporovat. Takže my se určitě nebráníme spolupráci s neziskovým sektorem a tomu, aby se nějakým způsobem poučili z příkladů, které jinde fungují a pokud možno je zavedli do praxe i tady v Praze.
My jsme v tuhletu chvíli uprostřed pandemické krize. Praha je jeden z regionů zasažený nejhůře v České republice v tuto chvíli. Jsou ekonomové a ekonomky, kteří jako plán východu tady z té krize vidí využití dosud nevyužitých potenciálů v té společnosti a jedním z nich je právě ta dosud potlačovaná rozmanitost. Myslíte si také, že to je jedna z cest z té ekonomické krize, která nás čeká? To znamená větší zapojení skupin obyvatel, jako jsou LGBT lidé, ženy, kteří doteďka trošku možná uměle byli z toho pracovního trhu a ekonomického vytlačování, nebo aspoň nějakým způsobem na něm znevýhodňování?
Určitě to je záležitost, která vlastně byla jenom nějak, řekl bych, urychlená tady tou koronakrizí, protože ty záležitosti typu návrat žen po mateřské do pracovního procesu, to je záležitost, se kterou tady byl ten problém dlouhodobě. To není nová věc. Tady je spíš otázka, jestli teda ta stávající situace přesvědčí ještě nějaký kousek té společnosti na to, aby jsme se konečně dostali k tomu, že ty změny skutečně uděláme. Já doufám, že se to opravdu stane. Z mého pohledu ta primární cesta vede přes inovace, jak se dostat z té krize. Inovace ve všech oblastech, to znamená nejenom v oblasti třeba farmacie, kde tedy je potřeba vyvinout nějakou vakcínu, ale třeba i v rovině digitalizační, to je opravdu, řekl bych, skoro až příležitost tahle krize, jak to posunout dál, ale třeba i v rovině informační ve smyslu, jak se chránit před fake news, které tady kolují o covidu. Takže protože, jak jsem zmiňoval, z mého pohledu inovace a diverzita jsou věci, které mají k sobě velice blízko. Z mého pohledu bych skoro řekl, bez diverzity nemůžete mít inovace nebo nemáte každopádně využitý potenciál plný pro inovace, tak určitě ano.
Děkuji vám za rozhovor.
Děkuji za pozvání.
Okay, here we are back in the studio ready to start our last panel discussion, our last live panel discussion. Let me welcome Managing Director and Head of Cities Government Affairs Team for Europe, Middle East and Africa, Alan Homan. Hello.
Hello. Hello, very nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you, and I am happy we can hear you. Executive Director at MSD Czech Republic, Anita Zubak. Hello.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
And CEO for Central Europe Publicis Group, Tomáš Varga.
Hello, thanks for the invitation.
Thank you so much. I just remind our audience they can ask any questions that are on their mind via Slido. My colleague Adela will go to them right after we finish the panel discussion together. Mr. Homan, do you believe in City that innovation goes hand in hand with diversity?
Absolutely, 100%. We're very focused on this at City. I mean, what we're trying to do is get the very best from our employees, and that means all of our employees. There's terrifying facts out there that nearly 2/3 of graduates go back into the closet when they enter the world of work. And if you are constantly checking yourself and being fearful of the environment, you're not going to do your best. So we have a very strong emphasis on making sure that all of our people contribute to our work. And innovation can only come when everyone contributes, all the ideas, not just a small subset.
In other words, do you believe that LGBT equality should stay at the center of our attention even after this global pandemic that has, of course, brought numerous other questions? Should this one stay a central one?
Absolutely, and it does. We have a global leadership. So the president of the bank co-chairs the LGBT network. It's given the top priority in the firm.
Mrs. Zubak, you're one of this year's Pride Business Forum heroes. Congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Do you know why you were nominated?
Yes, I do. And I have to thank my colleagues who are running our local chapter of what we call our Merck Rainbow Alliance. So MSD is part of a global company based in the US called Merck. We're the MSD affiliate here in the Czech Republic. And we started our local chapter about 2 years ago, right about the time when I came into my current role here. And very quickly, the group became quite active. And we were able to get ourselves a spot in the Prague Pride Parade last year and able to march as a company. And even though our employer on a global scale is very much in favor of LGBT and diversity and inclusion, there were some challenges to get us to march in that parade that we were able to overcome thanks to my help and the help of the team members that are part of the organization locally.
That is right, and you joined Pride Business Forum in June this year. So I meant to ask you why? Why now, during pandemic times?
And I would say, why not? It's part of our continued journey to show our employees here in the Czech Republic that we're serious, that we take this seriously. It's not just policies that sit on a website somewhere, that we are living and breathing this every day.
Mr. Varga, chairwoman of your company, Elisabeth Badinter, is a well-known French philosopher and feminist. So to what extent is her philosophy embedded in the values of your company?
Yeah, it is. It was one of the reasons, but not only this, why we join this activity. And Publicis Group is very open and very diversified company. Why we are a creative agency, or we focus on marketing, communication, and how to help the clients. And diversity is one of the trigger effect how bring the new ideas, the new way of thinking. And this is exactly what not only our client, but this society needs.
Well, you represent a company that just signed a Pride Business Forum memorandum. Why was it crucial to you?
It was, for me personally, it was very crucial because I really believe in diversity. I am on this position for 5 years, and we have changed very significantly. And thanks to diversity of people, more culture, and LGBT as well, I think that it helped us a lot with the transformation of organization. So therefore, I believe in it.
Mr. Houwman, what do you do at Citi for your LGBT employees during those difficult times?
So we do many things, but let me take them in order. So we're working very closely on self-identification. This is, you might say this is sort of an HR project, but actually if you can't have a policy if you have no numbers. And of course we identify gender, so making sure that there's good representation of women at the top of the office and all through the organization. But it's very hard to collect data on other minority groups. And so we're focusing very tightly on that and working through the legal implications of collecting that information. Then, of course, those policies need to translate into recruitment, promotion, and retention for all our staff, and not just the men. So for everyone, not just the straight white men. And so we want to make sure that this actually is driven through the whole organization. But we also have Pride networks. So you might say that's the grassroots. And we're very focused on making sure that there's mentoring for the staff, that there's proper communication. It's not just a social club. It's very much sort of making sure that we're actually recruiting the right people into the organization. I'm very proud of that. And then, of course, the staff benefits. We're rolling out programs to make sure that it's equal for everybody all across the globe, for married, civil partnership, and households. And so we're making sure that this is all through the organization. Someone once said, a value is not a value if it's just in your head. Then it's just a secret. You've got to be very open about what your values are and making sure everyone knows those values and lives them day to day, and then they can make a difference.
Mrs. Zubak, to my last question about why you joined Pride Business Forum in times of economic crisis, you answered why not. So let me get back to that. How hard or difficult or challenging or long was it to persuade your company to do so in such times?
Actually, it went pretty quickly, considering. So I don't think we had any hurdles, and the pandemic really didn't have any negative impact. One of the things that our company is very strong about is diversity and inclusion. For the last 5 years, we spend the entire month of September focusing on diversity and inclusion, and continue to try to promote that throughout the year. So it's not just a once-a-year event. So there really wasn't any issue in persuading it. It's, again, why not? These are the types of things that, again, the actions speak louder than the words.
Both of our keynotes were talking about a chance that global pandemic is giving us to use the full potential of each and every employee, whether LGBT or not, to full extent. So what do you do in your company in order to attract LGBT talents? Mrs. Zubak.
So we have the diversity inclusion, as I've mentioned, as one of our top priorities. We promote this through our Twitter presence, of course, so that through social media, that is very clear. It's also highlighted when we do any recruiting events. It's part of our job descriptions that we are a diverse and inclusive environment. So these are all things that are very clear. And then again, we continue to back that up with action.
And the same question goes to you, Mr. Houwman. How do you attract LGBT talent?
So it's a very interesting statistic that Stonewall, which is an LGBT organization in the UK, 49% of 18 to 24-year-olds do not identify as heterosexual. So the world is changing, and so if you want to attract new talent, the new graduates, the new people coming into the firm on the ground floor, you need to actually look to their values and reflect those. So we have university recruitment programs. I myself have gone out many times to the campuses and talked about Citi's values because we want to make sure that they understand that the firm that they're joining is one that is progressive and welcomes everybody into the firm. We want the full range of talent. We have mentoring programs, as I said. We have ally programs to make sure that that everyone can be part of the program.
Mr. Varga, according to our next slide, 47% of young people are going back to the closet at their first employment, which is, after Romania, the worst result in Europe. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I saw this statistic, and I have to say that I'm very shocked. I didn't expect it. And this is something what we should do on the CEO level, and bring the project and the internal communication and very clearly send the message that this topic is something which is normal, which is and try to create the open community. And we should start from the bottom, because if we would like to change this world, we need to start with the bottom. So from the smaller communities, such as the companies are. So this is what we should do. And my role as a CEO, because I'm decision maker, this is something what I would like to bring from the bottom and start with it.
So you're speaking about addressing a message. Could you tell us more specifically what exactly the plans are to actually establish a greater LGBT equality at the workplace?
Yeah. So what we would like to start immediately is that by law you have some if it is marriage between men and woman, you have some specific law, but for a man and man or woman and woman, it's not possible. So this is something what we would like to do as a not benefit, but as a normal and standard process. So this is example one of way. But in general, our segment is very attractive for LGBT. As another companies, we open many programs in high universities or high schools, and try to attract the people for our segment. So, and as I said, thanks to this attractiveness, because it's a very diversified business, as a marketing it is very attractive for LGBT. But on the other side, we would like to communicate that all rules what the legislative has for women and men is the same in our company, and we will respect it.
Does it mean, in other words, that you are going to change your internal policies?
Yes.
Did I understand you correctly?
Yes, exactly.
And one last question to all three of you. Is this field something that you feel comfortable dealing with alone on a private company level, or do you feel more support would be needed coming from national governments, for instance? Mr. Houman?
No, absolutely. We, Citi, have very strong values, and same values everywhere. You might even say it's the embassy model, that regardless of how repressive or restrictive the country we're in, the values inside Citi, inside the embassy compound, are our values. But that's not to say that we don't want to help change the external environment. We're very big on advocacy. We sign many amicus briefs with the US Supreme Court. We were part of the marriage equality campaigns in Ireland and Northern Ireland, and we're always looking to see what new campaign we can join in and lend our support. The business voice is a very powerful voice. It's jobs and employment, and politicians listen to that. And increasingly, we're finding the courage to make that point to politicians that our investment in their country, it does come with some strings attached. And that is a diversity agenda.
Mrs. Zubak?
Yeah, I would echo some of those same comments. So for our corporation, we spend a lot of time especially our CEO, Ken Frazier, speaking out about the importance of diversity and inclusion. We are looking to make enhancements to our global policies around workplace harassment, discrimination, violence, bullying, in light of some of the recent events around the globe, making sure that we put that first and foremost and that we act responsibly as a corporation and lead by example. So we continue to make that clearly important. And I think one of the things that the pandemic has taught us is that disease does not discriminate. And we need to do whatever we can to ensure that sense of equality and inclusion is pertinent in all aspects of our lives.
Thank you very much. Mr. Varga, the closing remarks of this panel discussion will be yours.
Yeah, so this is very similar what Mr. Zubak and Mr. Hauptmann did. From the global perspective, we apply global policy from the company, and this is what I already mentioned in the last my comment. So why I don't know what to say more. So this is what I already mentioned.
Thank you all three for your excellent contributions in this last panel discussion that we could have had today. You will get some more questions coming from all those watching us, and they will be given to you by my colleague Adela, who is just joining me on stage. So please stay with us. There she is, delivering questions from our curious audience.
And continuing in her role as the liaison officer between us in the studio and you at home or at work. The focus of this segment is the future. How will the pandemic affect LGBT equality at workplace? And that's why we asked you in the previous poll whether you think it is important that employers stay focused on LGBT workplace equality even in times of economic crisis. And what you think is that 58% of you think that absolutely yes, even more now than before. 42% of you thinks just like before. 0% of you thinks they should not do it at all, and 0% of you have no opinion. Those are obviously results that are encouraging on one hand, and also maybe creating some sort of a commitment on the side of the companies. I've heard before that the work on LGBT equality is sometimes considered part of the non-essential business, which always strikes me as very interesting, because most of the businesses will say that their people is the core of their business. There is no business without people who either produce it or are on the receiving end of it. And yet we still tend to think that the way we treat people and the way they create relationships between themselves at work is non-essential. So I would like to turn some of these questions to our panelists. First one is actually very, let's say, up to date, but also maybe a little bit funny. And it goes to Mrs. Zubak. The question is, when will you release the vaccine against COVID so we can all network again?
Yeah, thank you, Adela. So I will say a couple of things. So we are a pharmaceutical company, as Adela mentioned, and we have 2 vaccines that are currently in clinical trials around the world. We also have a treatment that, an antiviral treatment, so that's for people who get the disease to help them recover more quickly. So the process for bringing drugs to market is long and complex, typically. And what we're doing for all of those is to base it on the science that we already know. So MSD has a long history in vaccine research and bringing vaccines to market. And we're leveraging the talents of our organization to drive that forward. But the most important thing that we have to do with any medicines that we would make available for the human population, especially when we would have to have something available to over 7 billion people on the planet, is to make sure that it's safe first and foremost. And then, of course, the effectiveness of combating the disease and preventing disease. So we are in early stages of clinical trials. We are hopeful because we are using technologies that, like I said, we have experience with, and more to come.
Thank you very much. I think I speak for all of us when I say I hope this will happen as soon as possible, because even though we manage quite well, nothing replaces the human contact and the chatting over coffees and cakes.
And mask-free.
And mask-free, absolutely. We can't wait to show our lipsticks. My next question goes to Mr. Houman. You are the Director of Government Affairs for a very large region. As you might have noticed, there are no public administration corporations that take part in the Pride Business Forum at this moment. Do you think they do have a place in platforms like this? And do you think also in public administration there is a work needed on LGBTI workplace equality?
We can't do it without the public sector. I mean, the private sector can take this debate very, very far. And we have, we're members of various pressure groups and trade associations. But in the end, we need the operating environment to reflect our values, and that if that means changing the law or local regulation, absolutely, we need, it can be bottom up, but it also, there is top down. And sort of public administrations, municipalities, we work very closely with them. And we're always trying to make sure that that we improve the economic welfare of the cities and the citizens we work with. But that applies across the board. So I mean, I think the mayor himself, put it very eloquently. Why not? This should be obvious that the economic welfare of everyone benefits from a change in attitude. More inclusion.
Thank you. Mr. Varga, there is a question referring to the earlier coming out videos we had seen during the conference. And it asks you whether you think that Michelle's decision to leave the big world of PR companies to prevent her transitioning, hurting the company, was necessary. I think we're running into some technical difficulties with connection of Mr. Varga, but don't despair. We will deal with that professionally. Well, I think this is a good time then to thank and say goodbye to our panelists for their time. Yet again, I am amazed with the fact that you, the great work you're doing inside such big and important companies. So thank you again for your work and for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to our audience,
Mezi zaměstnanci ve firmách jsou i LGBT lidé. Svou identitu raději skrývají, pokud si nejsou jistí, že jim coming out nepoškodí vztahy s kolegy nebo šanci na povýšení. Lžou, s kým byli na dovolené. Raději nejdou na firemní párty pro zaměstnance a jejich partnerky. Trans lidé nepijí v práci, aby neriskovali konflikt na toaletě. Jen zaměstnanec, který nic neskrývá, se může naplno věnovat práci, je spokojený a loajální svému zaměstnavateli. Řada firem si to již uvědomila a vytváří pracovní prostředí přátelské LGBT lidem. Budují pozitivní firemní kulturu, například zapojením do LGBT akcí. Poskytují LGBT zaměstnanecké benefity, které ostatní dostanou automaticky od státu, třeba 3 dny volna na svatbu. Zavádějí fair pravidla řízení lidských zdrojů. Aktivně komunikují o LGBT tématu, podporují vznik LGBT plus zaměstnaneckých skupin. Pokud chcete i u vás vytvořit otevřené pracovní prostředí a těžit z jeho výhod, nemusíte vše vymýšlet od začátku. Platforma Pride Business Forum, která sdružuje LGBT-friendly firmy, vám se vším pomůže. Nabídneme vám mentoring, podělíme se o zkušenosti, poskytneme vzory vnitřních předpisů. Budete zváni na workshopy, networkingová setkání a každoroční konferenci. Budete ve společnosti těch nejlepších a můžete pak sami vyhrát cenu LGBT Friendly Employer of the Year. Co je ten první krok, který musíte udělat? Podepsat Pride Business Forum memorandum, jímž se zavážete k budování otevřeného pracovního prostředí. Podpisem se stáváte členem platformy Pride Business Forum a práce může začít. Připojte se k nám www.Pride Business Forum nebo na LinkedInu a Facebooku.
We are almost at the end of our 10th annual conference, but before we wrap it up, we would like to invite on stage Mr. Christian Schwenke, Chairman of Pride Business Forum and General Manager of Hilton Old Town Prague. Mr. Schwenke, please join us. Hello.
Super. Thank you very much, ladies. Good to be with you, and thanks for the warm welcome.
Welcome, Christian. This is the first time in 10 years that the conference does not take place in your hotel, Hilton Old Town Prague. How does it make you feel?
Well, Hilton is a member of the Pride Business Forum since 10 years and therefore since the very beginning. And of course we would love to be together now in a conference and sit together and engage. Usually around that time we would indulge a nice lunch and have a bit of a networking. So of course it's a bit different times we live through, but the team has been very creative and said, okay, we want to make it happen, we want to make the 10th year happen, and I think they've done it greatly and even linked it, as you've seen it from the registration, with a little charity. And that's a great thing, a new addition, and I'm happy to share because we just got the numbers that thanks to your contributions, we were able to collect 17,000 Czech crowns for a good cause, which is fantastic. And my big thanks, of course, to the organizing committee, to the speakers, to the panelists, to you, and all the participants who are online with us today.
Well, thank you for your good energy and optimism for not breaking down here on stage. I don't know what we would do about it. We will probably say we have a technical problem again. Now, as you've mentioned yourself, Hilton has been part of this adventure for the last 10 years. So how did the LGBT equality environment actually changed in the Czech Republic, according to you, because you've been witnessing it for some time now?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Emma. And I must say we made good progress. When you look back, and back then it was the task to make this subject more visible for the community and for all the people we work with. And there was good progress being made. If you look back in 2013, only about 14% of the workforce were the true who they are at work and came out with their identity. Now it's about 24%. That's one step, and of course, if you say 24%, you can see how much is still there to be done, and I think there's still a lot of work ahead of us. Only about 27% of the companies engage and enforce a bit more of an LGBT engagement and look after the team members in that way. So a lot more to be done, and this is what the Pride Business Forum is there for, to help with the tools we have available.
Is there anything you could call the biggest achievements made so far? Or is it just a slow, basically not even that visible process that is happening with no specific things that would stand out?
Look only at the members of the Pride Business Forum, how many we have today. If we look back a couple of years ago, and at the first one, it was around 50 people attending, and the atmosphere was, how should I say, people were curious, people didn't really know what we are doing there, why should we meet? But that has evolved massively. We are now at 30 plus members, which is a fantastic result, and I think the team can be very proud of getting so many big companies and local companies all together and exchanging, and I think this is one of the biggest successes.
Good to know.
And the number of the members of Pride Business Forum is growing, and it is my pleasure now to introduce 4 new members of the Pride Business Forum family. Those are Pure Storage, Život 90, Publicis Group, and a company that most of you will probably know, Avast. As Christian mentioned, this brings the total number of members of Pride Business Forum to 30. The good news is the sky's the limit, so more and more companies are welcome to join. Christian, let's play the old game, the elevator pitch. Imagine we bumped into each other in a hotel. I am a female CEO of a major firm, already hard to believe, and you want to sell me the idea of a Pride Business Forum. You have about 30 seconds before the elevator reaches my golden decorated penthouse in the 17th floor of the hotel. Why should we join Pride Business Forum?
Well, Adela, thanks. It's a fast elevator ride, unfortunately only for 30 seconds. I give you 2 points, actually. The one is, it's what I'm repeating, what I just said now. Look at the numbers, how they grew, and the number of brands and the companies we have attended now at the Pride Business Forum. It's just massive. It speaks for itself, going up to 30 member companies. On the other hand, I would say it's very logical, it's very simple. Because if you want to evolve your business, if you want to be successful, you can't do this really from a top to bottom approach. Everybody knows this, every leader knows this. You need to have a bottom up approach. You need to have your teams engaging, coming up with solutions and helping you being creative and developing products and whatever you need to do to serve your customers. And this you can only do it in an inclusive environment where people are themselves, and we help you doing it.
This was definitely not 30 seconds. We just saw in real time what happens when a general manager of a hotel decides to stop the elevator. But we forgive you, we forgive you. Can you tell us what the Pride business plans are for the next 10 years? And let's make it a faster elevator ride, if possible.
We'll make it very fast. Of course, we have a lot of challenges ahead. It's not only the pandemic at the moment, but we want to feel everybody inclusive, that everybody engages, every company has equal rights for their team members. And until we haven't reached this, we won't stop. Very simple.
Thank you very much, Christian, for being with us in the studio.
Thank you indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and good luck. Dear all, we hope you enjoyed those 2 and almost a half hours with us. We hope you learned a lot. We hope you found some new sources of inspiration, you encountered maybe some new thoughts, things you will want to process and then decide what you actually think about them. Maybe your opinions might have shifted after what you've heard today, maybe not. Both is perfectly all right with us. We will in any case be very grateful if you think about LGBT equality in workplaces even more than you've done so far, whether you are a big, mid-size or small company.
Because LGBT people do deserve equality. It is good not only for them, but for the society as a whole. So remember, go to our website, www.pridebusinessforum.com, where you will find information on not only how to join our PBF family, but also how to start with LGBT equality at workplace. Whether you are a manager, HR manager, owner, or an employee, there are very practical and tailored recommendations for you in each of the situations. As Emma mentioned earlier, who's not on the social media as if did not exist before at all, so please like us, subscribe, and follow on all of the platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, and hopefully soon coming more. I would like to thank the team that organized this whole conference. You do not see a lot of them, you only see me and Emma, but there is a lot of people who worked tirelessly on this conference, which I think turned out to be a great success and without any major glitches. Our technical team. Share the word, spread the love, and see you next year.
And I would love to thank my fantastic co-host Adela, who's been amazing. Thank you all, goodbye, and stay positive in the right sense of the word. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.